Hello and welcome to another episode of Laptop Retrospective, and today I have some really interesting things from Xebec. So you'll see that I've got the Tri-Screen 2, their Tri-Screen adapter kit, and the Xebec Air Stand. I'll be featuring the Xebec Air Stand in another separate video later on. So before we continue, all three of these products were sent to me by Xebec for the production of this review. These were not personally purchased, and I am not being financially compensated for this video beyond receiving these products. My opinions and views of these remain 100% my own. I've been a huge fan of mobile monitors, as you know from viewing this channel, because they are a really good force multiplier for when you're on the move, where you want to have that access to a second screen to either facilitate collaboration with other people, or you just have so many tabs open, it's getting cumbersome copying and pasting or referencing documentation. I recall one instance during the summer where having a secondary screen probably cut down about 4 days of work that I was asked to do. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how two screens attached to a laptop works out, and I'm also really curious about compatibility. A few technical specifications I want to get out of the way immediately is that this is a two-screen 10.1 inch system. So each screen is 10.1 inches and the resolution is 1920 by 1200. It is an IPS panel, and you will know from that resolution that it is a 16 by 9 aspect ratio, which is where things are really trending to again. Both of the panels are operating at 60 Hertz, and this is supposed to be able to fit on laptops from 12 inches all the way up to 20. The whole unit is supposed to weigh about 2 pounds, so that's about the average weight of a lighter laptop. So that will make it potentially very easy to travel with, depending on how many other accessories and pieces you might need to move along with it. For those of you that are curious, each screen requires 5 amps, 2 volts. And let's go ahead and unpack the main kit. So I'm going to grab my trusty blade here and snick 2 security stickers, one on the back and one on the front. And now that we have those removed, we can take these 2 pull tabs, and we are actually getting a really colorful box. So we're going to go ahead and put these 2 halves off to the side, open this up, and we are greeted with a welcome message and a piece of foam there from, I believe, the founder, which is nice to see. And then, of course, we have the unit itself. All right, so a little bit of depth to it. We have a user guide, and then we have an accessory compartment where it says cables and cables. So under here, we should find 2 HDMI to mini HDMI cables, 2 USB-A to USB-C adapters, USB Type-C 90-degree pass-through charging adapter, Velcro cable tie, and then over here, 2 times USB to USB cables, and then a USB Type-C extender. So this is really nice because there's nothing worse than having to go out and buy cables for the thing that you just bought. Now, of course, there might be issues of compatibility, but we'll talk through that in a minute. And we've got some cool stickers. I particularly like this one. I like that style. Just lots of color. Makes it very unique. So, we'll put the stickers aside and the box aside, and we'll take a look at the actual piece itself. So this is one of the kickstand feet. It's not quite lying flush, so we'll see what's going on with that there in a moment. So if we turn our attention to the quick start guide, of which there is an online version of this as well, it walks you through the input buttons, the cables that you're going to need to use. There's QR codes for you to make sure compatibility works. There's the Get Started Guide link up here. It walks you through how to set it up and install it, how to configure displays, how to use the kickstand, and how to use all the pass-throughs and other good information. It is worth pointing out that in this box, the manual is in English only. Without further ado, let me grab a laptop and let's just plug this in and see how it all works together. All right, so I have the Tri-Screen. I have my X1 Nano here, which is a 13-inch essentially. And what we need to do is we need to orient this right way up, of course. And we pull on either side to expand and contract the device so it fits just over top, like so. And then we want to put out the kickstand at the back, and that seems to be sitting okay. I think there might be some instances where having two kickstands on the back might be preferable. And then it's a simple matter of pulling the screens out all the way until the hinge is fully exposed. So that kind of came off. So it might be worth pointing out, it's too early to say, but if your laptop has a thin top lid, this could be a bit of a challenge. We'll see. So I'm going to adjust those screens like that. And because I know that the only ports on this are USB Type-C to USB Type-C, I'm going to go ahead and grab those cables out. My ports are on the left-hand side, so this one will very clearly reach and connect. This one probably won't, so I'll need to use the included extension adapter. All right, from a technical standpoint, everything is working as we would hope and expect. So both of the screens auto-detected, they're working fine, they're dimming as I would expect. The resolution on my main display here is quite high because of the high-resolution panel the X1 Nano has. And I would say that while this works pretty well in terms of all the connectivity, on the back of this unit, not having the kickstand on both sides is somewhat of a concern, because it's quite clear to me that the connection over here is being made much better on the display than this one, where it's just kind of sliding off the end and it's not really catching correctly. It's doing okay over here, but it also has the kickstand on this side to help support it. So from a technical standpoint, absolute success. No concerns there. I am going to mess around with the display settings just to see what kind of resolution we might be able to get these to perform at. I've scaled up these two displays to 150% just to make sure that the details are a little bit easier to read. No technical complaints here. I like the idea that they're both able to plug in easily. There is some pass-through for power delivery, so if I need to charge this machine, I can still do that. And then, of course, if I wanted to hook this up to a docking station, that would also make the process pretty easy as well. Again, though, if you have a lighter weight laptop or one with a thinner display lid, I have some concerns about how well this would stay on, at least in this example, because it's just not fitting quite right. So I'm going to try a different machine and see what we require to get it plugged in, and also to see if it sits any better on that model. Next up, we have the workstation class P50. So I've got the Tri-Screen. I'm going to pull it out, put it over top, making sure it's hugging the sides, and I'm already feeling a bit more confident about how well that's going to hold on. And then we can do the same thing where we're pulling the screens out of their docks here, folding them in like so. And we have a different selection of ports here, so I'm going to need an HDMI cable out of the HDMI bag. That'll go into one of the mini display ports on this side. And then I do have Thunderbolt, so I should be able to use that cable for that display. Now, because HDMI, of course, doesn't carry power delivery, I'll need to plug in another USB cable here, and then use one of the included adapters. And I can plug that in anywhere, but I'll do it here in view of the camera. We got it working. So the one on the left-hand side here is being powered and plugged in by the USB Type-C connector through the Thunderbolt 3 jack in the back. And then I have HDMI and then USB Type-C going into USB Type-A to provide power, and then of course the display signal. And everything's running as intended. Again, I would probably want to scale up these displays to 150% just for me. You might like the lower or pardon me, the finer scaling at 100%, but just the size of the screen, I think 150% in Windows or 125% would be kind of ideal. So you do have a bit of cable management shenanigans going on in the background, but you know what? If you're running two displays that you're pulling out of your backpack, that's probably a trade-off that you would be willing to make. Let's go ahead and try it on another kind of stranger shaped device. Here is an odd one for us to try. So this is an ASUS gaming laptop, and it's got a few things that I'm a little bit curious on how it's going to handle. First off is a limited port selection. So on this side I've got HDMI and USB, and then that's it. So we'll see if we can get this Tri-Screen to work with it. The other thing to consider is that it being a gaming laptop, it's got some idiosyncrasies with the lid, including rounded corners. And I'm really curious to see how the Tri-Screen is going to grip to those, if it grips to those. Go ahead and take our screen, expand it, put it in behind. We'll move our kickstand down. Everything seems to be okay there. So we'll fold out our wings. Let's see if we can get everything to plug in here, or are we going to have to go to the adapter kit? So this is an instance where this adapter kit is probably going to be what we need, because we've only got one HDMI port and then a bunch of USB ports, and that's all we got to work with. So this is on their website and part of the kit that you can get, and there's some information here on the back, part of the compatibility guide. So let's see if we can use this to get Tri-Screen running on this gaming laptop, or if we're out of luck. The Tri-Screen adapter comes with this USB-A to mini HDMI USB Type-C, and then we've got a USB Type-C to USB Type-A adapter in there as well if we need it. Now we're running into a bit of a problem because this laptop has put all of its ports on the left-hand side. There are no ports on the right. So this is not going to be long enough to reach around, plug in here, and then reach these screens. So I'm going to try and plug it into this side and then move the other cables over. We'll see if we have enough cable length to do that. All right, so we've got the cables moved over to the right. So now if I take the USB Type-A, plug that in, I get a green light. All right, so everything is connected and working. Installing the display link driver does exactly what it's supposed to. I didn't even have to reboot it on this machine. Both displays are showing independent content. The one downside is that if your laptop is much bigger than 15 inches, you're putting some potential strain on the cables in the back. I know that the manual says that the screen adapter can go up to 20 inches, but I'm not entirely sure if your cables will make that jump, depending on what side of the machine the ports are on. In this instance, where all the ports are on one side, then this was a good challenge for it, but it did pass. The only downside, of course, is I only have one USB port left. However, if you want this sort of setup, you're probably going to see that as an acceptable compromise, given that you ultimately only have one HDMI port and you need to provide power to both of the screens. Let's try another laptop and see what the connection experience is like. Next up, I have a blast from this channel's past, at the very least, the Surface Book 2. I'm obviously going to have to remove the Surface Pen, and then we'll do the same thing we've always done, which is expand this, and that's not gripping really at all to the Surface Book 2. Now, that could be because of the toast skin that's installed on this, but those are some pretty tight tolerances, so anything thicker than my Surface Book 2 with a toast cover on it, this thing isn't really going to grip to terribly well without significant support from the stand. And the problem with the stand, as I've mentioned earlier, is that it's only on one side. So this is what I would describe as functional but precarious. Let's go ahead and see what cables we are going to need to get this thing up and running. So I do have a USB Type-C connector on this side, and then I have a USB-A port that I'm going to have to use the display link cable with, because that's all I've got. You could do some trickery with the Surface dock connector, of course, but this is supposed to be used mobile, so bringing a docking station, you're kind of blurring the lines there a bit. I'm going to grab my USB Type-C cable and plug that in here. And then I'm going to need the Tri-Screen adapter. And I'm going to have to plug that into one of my 2 available USB ports. So interestingly enough, the Surface Book 2 just did its thing and found the drivers on its own. The whole laptop has tipped forward here, and that's not surprising. The Surface Book 2 always did have a bit of concern over whether or not it would tip, and it probably would have tipped more so, but as you can see, the Tri-Screen has moved itself away, and yeah, just isn't really going to work on a device of this thickness. So that's something to keep in mind, is if your device is of a certain thickness, the best thing that I would say you can hope for is maybe balancing the Tri-Screen on the top corners. But for my specific example here with the toast cover on it, yeah, precarious is the exact word that I would use. All right, so overall, what do I think of the Tri-Screen 2 by Xebec? Let's preface that first off by the price bracket that this device fits into, because price is always a point of discussion. So when it's not on sale, the Tri-Screen 2 costs 649 Canadian dollars. The Tri-Adapter kit costs 64. This is not an inexpensive piece of kit. If your laptop requires the adapter and the screen, and neither one is on sale, that's over a 700 Canadian dollar investment. And for many people, that is about the cost of the laptop. So you want to make sure that this is going to be 100% compatible with your device. And the biggest lessons learned, I would say, is this. There is a sweet spot for bezel or top case thickness that you need to have. So in the examples that we've tested today, the X1 Nano was too thin and too light. It didn't quite sit correctly and slid off quite a few times. And conversely, the Surface Book 2 with the toast skin on the back, which clocked in at a certain amount of millimeters. I'll put it up on the screen here for you. The bezels here aren't, they were too narrow to accommodate that. It was about 6.25 millimeters of kind of travel between this edge here and this lip. So even though it was sitting on the top, on the edges, there was no security along the edges here, which means this is pulling straight down on the laptop, causing it to tip. So on a regular Surface Book 2, you would probably be okay. And on many other devices, you'll probably be okay. But you do need some bezels, you need some quality hinges if you want this thing to kind of perform at its best. So the gaming laptop we tried was perfectly fine. The P50 was perfectly fine. The P50 was so great it didn't even need the use of the kickstand, quite frankly. It could have just hung there because those hinges are fantastic. But I would definitely say the fit is definitely really, really important. The other thing, of course, to consider is, do you need 2 screens in that configuration? Because that is a premium that you are paying here. A single screen will be cheaper, but it will be a single screen. Overall, I would say that this sets out to do what it does in certain circumstances. And so long as you're aware of the technical requirements, which I think Xebec does a fantastic job of outlining whether or not it will work, whether or not you need the adapter kit. Like, they've done a really good job there. I think the one thing in my mind is just making sure it's really clear what devices this works best with. I think could be communicated perhaps a little bit more explicitly. There are a few things with my example that I kind of wished were a little bit different. One of them being the kickstand on my example doesn't want to appear to sit flush. I'm not too sure what's going on with that. Like when you make a stiff hinge like this, sometimes the rest position can be very difficult to engineer if you can't bend it beyond that rest position for it to be snug. So I could see this catching on things, and if it catches on something in a bad way, it could possibly snap. But other than that, I think everything else is more or less what you would expect. If you do have any questions, or if there's something you want me to test with this, then please let me know in the comments section down below. And as always, if anything interesting happens to this, I'll be sure to record a follow-up video and inform you with what's going on there. I do want to thank Xebec for sending me the Tri-Screen 2, the adapter kit, and all that other good stuff. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you want to be notified the next time I get an opportunity to look at mobile monitor kits like this, I would encourage you to do the big four. Please like the video, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so the next time I do release a video like this, you'll be the first to know about it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.